Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's WiLSWorld Shorts, Redesigning Library Spaces for Health and Safety, with our presenters from Demco. I'm Andy Coffin. I'm a Community Liaison and Service Specialist with WiLS. And before we dig into our presentation today, I just wanted to go over a couple of things about what you can expect in the Zoom world here. All attendees are right now muted, but you can unmute yourself if you do have a question. However, there will be time at the end of the presentation for any additional questions as well. And the chat and Q&A features here on Zoom are available if you do have questions that you want to get out as they come up, as you're seeing what our presenters are giving us. And we are monitoring that, so we'll make sure that those questions are addressed by our presenters. The webinar will be recorded today, and we'll be sure that that gets sent out to all the folks who registered, and it'll be shared on our website too. So that kind of closes just the housekeeping piece of what we need to do today. So let's dig right in and meet our presenters. We have with us today Stephen Gower and Kurt Zastrow. Stephen is the lead, Stephen leads the Design Services Department within Demco, and he's an experienced furniture, product, and interior designer with a background in creating educational interiors and associated products. Stephen has over 20 years of design experience, including 5 years of international experience at Demco Interiors UK and England. Stephen holds a Bachelor of Arts degree with honors in furniture design from Brunel University and High Wycombe. And his awards include 2017 and 2019 Ed Spaces Classroom Design winner. We also have with us Kurt Zastrow. Kurt has more than 20 years of customer-focused experience, and he's currently a consultant for K-12 school districts across the country, concentrating his efforts here in Wisconsin. He uses his passion and expertise to help librarians and educators create engaging and effective learning environments, and for that work, we thank him. With that, I am going to turn it over to Kurt, who will lead us off.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and Andy, thanks for that nice welcome. Greetings to you on this beautiful day here in Wisconsin. Just a quick agenda for you before I toss it over to Steve. You know, with the onset of COVID, we spent a lot of time earlier this year thinking about how our library spaces can function safely, and excited to show you some of the renderings that Stephen's team has created in these virtual spaces to help you envision ways for your library and furnishings to be arranged safely. And we're going to take you through 3 main buckets of spaces here. And we're really hoping that some of these visuals we're finding at some point you just need something to react to. So we've grouped these in kind of the public library, school library, and then outdoor spaces have gained a lot of attention here as of late as we try and find every nook and cranny of spaces that can be used either for patrons or staff and students to spread them out safely. So we've done some recent work around outdoor spaces. Stephen will do a really good job in discussing kind of the design thinking of each space, kind of what went into the design, some of the ideas and inspiration for some of these spaces for you guys to think about. And then I'll end it just with some additional virtual reality links for you all to check out, or you can share with your staff. It's sometimes a really good way to facilitate conversations. Some of these renderings, obviously safety solutions are top of mind, so I wanted to share a link with you about that. And then save some time at the end. You can ask questions again along the way, but if we want to block out some time for any design specific questions that you may have for Stephen, we wanted to save some time at the end. And really the goal coming out of this is, again, just ideas and inspiration for your redesigned spaces that can be done safely. And sometimes visual is a great way to start. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I will hand it over to Stephen.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kurt. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing the screen. So this is the first conceptual space that we designed to help communicate design recommendations in terms of COVID-19 layouts. So this is a public library space. The design team, we created this library, this architectural space from scratch, and we use this basically as a template that we could then design within. So this is a plan view looking down onto this public library space. We have a vestibule area in the top right-hand corner, so that's the main entrance. We have the main library space that runs across the center of the library. In the bottom right-hand corner, we have a children's area, and then moving to the left, 2 community rooms. And then on the left-hand lower side, the teen area. So this is basically our template that we designed into. This is plan view looking down. And then we rendered these spaces. We created this space in 3 dimensions. And those are the slides that we're going to share with you going forwards. Those 3-dimensional views. So this is the first area. This is the entrance area at the top right-hand corner of the public library that we were just looking at. So this is a 3-dimensional view of that area. And what we're trying to illustrate here is some recommendations, best practices around how your entrance areas can be used. And in this view, we're speaking to placing sanitization stations by entrances and exits, so people can clean their hands as they enter the library space, and then also as they exit. Additionally, we're sorry about that. Additionally, we're recommending that self-check stations. If you have self-check stations, try and look into technology that's easy to clean. Self-check technology that would have limited touch points. Anything that reduces the touch of patrons as they're checking in and checking out books is a recommendation. In this view here, we also showed sanitization stations directing traffic, or at least dividing between entrances and exits. So using furniture and using items to help direct traffic flow and traffic routes is something that we've shown throughout all of these renderings. This is the circulation desk area. And what we're showing here is the recommendation to use floor markers to help define 6-foot physical distancing. So you can see we're placing floor markers in front of the circulation desk, which allows and guides patrons to space themselves apart as they're waiting to either check a book in or get assistance from staff. We're also recommending adding screens to staff service points. And that's what we're showing here. You can see the acrylic screens on the front of the staff points. These screens also have a small access point below, which helps for transferring books, leaflets, any other information. And then in this slide, we're also looking to recommend placing book returns that correlate to traffic flow. So as patrons enter the library and flow around the space, making these any elements that patrons would use often, designing them and placing them in a place that would work with the traffic flow. In this view, we're showing how you can extend that traffic flow principle into your library space. And so here we're having we're marking the traffic flow onto the floor with these directional arrows. We're using physical furniture items such as these display pieces to further identify where these traffic flows are. So introducing one-way traffic routes that makes sense for your space. Every library space is unique. And so adding these floor markers and considering your library space in terms of how a one-way traffic system would work for your space and the different areas within your space. And then identifying that traffic route with floor markers and also any additional signage. In this view, we're emphasizing again adding sneeze guards onto any existing double-sided tables that may exist within your public library. And also considering removing chairs at certain tables that would help promote the distancing functionality that you're trying to recommend. So in this case, even though these tables are double-sided. We're suggesting, removing 2 chairs on this side, and it just helps to promote that functionality. With these slides and these three-dimensional renderings, we're also building these spaces in virtual reality. And anytime there's an icon on this presentation, we're able to click this slide and then share this same view that we were looking in 2D into a 3-dimensional view. And so that you can see, this helps to orientate yourself to the space that we've just been seeing. So we have the vestibule area here, we have the sanitization stations, self-check units, the limited touch self-check units, the circulation desk with the distancing markers. And then as you walk into the library, these tables here with the recommendation to pull out 2 chairs on either side to promote distancing. So this is the lounge area in the public library that we're showing here. And by including this view, what we're trying to promote and recommend is using freestanding screening to help define traffic flow around smaller zones. So we have these standing screen elements, and this helps to define this traffic route going down the side of that. And it just helps build these zones into a library space. And this screening helps define that zone, helps promote traffic flow. But in addition to this area, what we're trying to show is these smaller screens. So building in these smaller screens to help further delineate these smaller zones. These lounge pieces that we're showing here, they also have an integrated back. And any furniture pieces that has a high back, have high sides, that includes or promotes screening can be a really good way to help build these individual workspaces and promote this 6-foot distancing model. Here you can see we're also having the mobile power units and the laptop tables. So all the advantage of these elements and how they can dock with lounge furniture is it makes these singular zones operate by themselves. It helps promote a single user digital device without having to congregate or work around a clustered power point. And it just helps that distancing and promote that distancing. In this view, again, where we have the one-way traffic route that's running down through the center of the public library space. But we're also saying, well, if you have the screening and you're using screening to promote and identify aisles, let's make use of that screening by docking up a table up against it and making singular workstations, but have those workstations facing away from the traffic flow. And that's another recommendation that we'd have, is once you have the traffic flow routes, how can you have any tables or stations that are up against that route facing away or facing parallel, but not facing towards that route, and it all helps promote that distancing and create individual and defined work zones. This is another part of the library area, and what we're trying to show here is that if there are table solutions that you're offering and workspace areas, how you can add a vertical screen element either on top of the table surface, which we're showing here with these acrylic screens, or in between the tables with these mobile whiteboard screens. So if you have any mobile whiteboard screens that you can think about introducing into this space, repurposing existing furniture items that you have to create these screened elements. Also screening, selecting surfaces that are easy to clean, whether it's a whiteboard laminate, a porcelain surface, but surfaces that are easy to keep clean during the day. And then mobility, mobile solutions and flexibility is a trend that we've been designing to for a number of years. And the great thing about having mobile solutions is that you're able to adapt these spaces over time and learn what layout works best to support distancing. So by having that mobility, you're able to adapt and learn as these spaces are used what works best for for your library and the spaces within your library. Again, this is a 360 VR space, so we can click this slide. You can see this is the top left-hand corner of the library. We have these whiteboard solutions that are further supported with these acrylic screens that sit on top of these surfaces. An additional recommendation that we have as you're designing your spaces and what would work for these social distancing arrangements is to consider positioning patrons so they sit back to back. And again, that's all about reducing that face-to-face contact, about creating these spaces within spaces. So we recommend that. We also recommend providing mobile power solutions, as I mentioned a few slides earlier. This all helps to create these zones to be independent. So a patron can come in with their own device and they're able to sit and work there. And it just helps support that distancing model. Also making use of any perimeter walls that you have in your space. Perimeter walls are great in terms of providing power. There's typically power that's easily available. Sometimes if there's power in the floor, that's a little bit more difficult to distribute across the space. You might not have it throughout your library. But typically on walls, there are power points that you can use and extend those power points using extension cables. So we recommend making use of that. And the good thing about perimeter workstations is the patron isn't actually facing away from the traffic route. So again, we're showing this single traffic route recommendation, marking the directions on the floor with these floor arrows. But these patrons, they have the power, but they're also facing away from that traffic route. And using existing shelving. So any existing shelving that you have in your library space, that can act as a great way, a natural screening device, essentially. So making use of the shelving that you have to build out these spaces within spaces. And then again, if you're able to complement that shelving with additional mobile screening that we're showing here, you can create some very defined work areas that has this screening that helps to support that distancing. Again, this is a three-dimensional view. So we can click that and we can see how we've got this high-level shelving here, but we have this space within a space between these high-level stacks, and then we're further building that out, both with this mobile screening and with these mobile desk elements that have an integrated work surface. And again, to give you an idea of where we are in this library area, so this is the main walkway into the space that we were looking at earlier. Then we have these mobile screening pieces. And then this is back into the main lobby area. If you do have high-level shelving that isn't mobile, by its nature, high-level shelving doesn't have that mobility, consider removing a 36-inch wide section of shelving if possible. And the rationale around that is that sometimes these high-level sections that you may have in your library, the aisles can be quite long. That can be a challenge sometimes in terms of creating effective traffic routes. And by removing a section and by maybe indicating a one-way traffic system, it just allows a more natural, more fluid traffic flow. And especially if there's a patron that's browsing a book down this one long aisle, it might limit flow down that route, but by having this additional in and out point, it just gives patrons more options and it allows more of a natural flow if you have any high level stacks. But low level shelving can be made mobile by its nature, and the mobile shelving can be used, you can flex that around your space and position it in a way to help further delineate where your one-way traffic routes are. So again, we have the mobile shelving here, and it's positioned an angle that defines and promotes this one-way exit route. Low-level shelving can be really effective in terms of social distancing as well, because it helps with sight lines. Patrons can see where other patrons are in the library. So if somebody's browsing a collection or a certain book at a certain shelf, patrons are able to sort of design their route or say, well, I'll come back to this area of the library in a few minutes. Whereas sometimes with higher level shelving, it's a little bit harder to see what's within that shelving and the usability and how many patrons are within that shelving. So it just helps keep the space more open. It helps that distancing model by seeing patrons being able to understand the spaces that are open, essentially. Here we're looking at a three-dimensional view of a teen space. And we're promoting here is the furniture that has this integrated screening. It's a strong trend that we've been seeing in furniture solutions, is products that have screening. It helps to create that private zone within a larger public library space. That can be great for managing sound, for creating that one-on-one zone, but it can also create a very characterful and unique space. And it's a great fit for a teen library. It creates a unique aesthetic, but it's also a great tool for providing screening and providing a distancing model and something that can work in a public library area. For any lounge furniture, consider vinyls or coated fabrics that are easy to clean. That's something that we've always recommended for a number of years for their durability and cleanability. But especially now with all the considerations that we're trying to work through with COVID-19, having that surface that's easy to clean and easy to wipe down multiple times a day is even more important. And again, as a slide that we shared previously, suggesting combining any of these screened areas with a pull-up side table, possibly with some mobile power. It all helps make these single spaces work and go beyond just a place to sit. It actually becomes a place to work and a place to plug in a laptop. It increases its functionality. And again, on the theme of products or solutions that have integrated screening, mobile desking that has fixed screening and in turn can be on casters is a great functional solution that you can look to integrate into your space, or maybe achieve that using pieces that you have already. And again, having that high back seating, high back desking, high back lounge can create characterful and unique spaces that can help work for a teen space. This is the children's part of the library. And in this view, we're showing that children's space, and we're making a couple of recommendations with this view. One of them is to consider solutions that create spaces within spaces. We have these proprietary products, we call them play pods, and we're recommending this as an example of a space within a space, about how you can build these singular spaces that have this natural screening. It's also a great fun area for a child to sit with a book. It feels like they're inside this house or inside this play pod. It creates a really fun dynamic, but it's also a great screening product and a great distancing product as well. And again, with the interior of these products, recommending a vinyl or a coated fabric that's easy to clean. This is a VR space that we can look into. You can see this is the children's library within this public library space. And we have these play pods that are adding to this, but also creating these spaces within spaces. And combining solutions that create screening or naturally create screening. And here we're showing some single-sided shelving. It's curved, which you can create a really interesting curved wave dynamic. But the advantage of this single-sided shelving, with it being mobile, is that it creates a natural screening. So you can see that one side has the book, but another side has a solid back panel, which you can then use to build out either study seating or a small lounge area. So with a lot of these spaces that we've been sharing today, when we were designing them, we were thinking, well, how can we make these successful to support distancing, but still keep them as a fun and dynamic and vibrant interior? And I think that's the challenge, is by repurposing what you have, any flexible furniture solutions, and, you know, reimagining your spaces to support distancing, but also to keep that vibrancy and to keep that fun and engaging aspects, especially important in the children's space. And that's what we're trying to show here with this view. So that was the public library. Are there any questions before we move on to the school library space?
There aren't any questions in the chat or Q&A, but for the folks on the line, if you want to unmute and ask the question, feel free.
Okay, so we'll move on to the school library. So this is a plan view of the school library that we designed. And again, this is a space that the design team at Demco, we created this from scratch. We're looking down on this school library space. We have an entrance and an exit area here. We have an additional entrance and exit here. This is a circulation desk. Outside the school library space, we have a breakout area. Then we have lounge. And then we're showing a classroom library space. And then library shelving with a couple of breakout zones at the back. So that's the 2D orientation view. And then we're into 3D, into the library space. And by sharing this view, we're making some recommendations. One of the recommendations is to locate hand washing facilities close to the library entrance. And so here we have a mobile sink solution that we're building in. It's close to the library entrance as you enter. We're integrating it into this low-level wave shelving. And mobile sinks and or sanitization stations. Units that are easy to move. This mobile sink is mobile. So items that you're able to flex around your space, move around your space, and locate them in a place that works for your architecture of your library, your entrance, exits, and any teaching areas that you might have. And again, in this view, this is the circulation desk. So we're recommending employing those 6-foot distancing markers. Depending on the architecture of your room, sometimes that can be a challenge. Circulation desks sometimes are difficult to relocate, but just making best use of your area and seeing if you can build out these 6-foot distancing markers. And again, adding acrylic screens to the service points. And again, we're showing the acrylic screen that has that small access point at the top to provide a way to share cross books or other information. And using low-level mobile shelving to help define a class zone. So here we have low-level mobile shelving, and we're using that basically as a way to build out this class area. School library spaces, they're a larger space, larger than a classroom, and so it's a way for you to possibly introduce a classroom area into your library, but still have the layout of that classroom be designed to support distancing with those 6-foot distancing offsets that are a CDC recommendation. So if you are building in that classroom area into your library, we also recommend trying to integrate mobile storage solutions that would be tailored to have one student have their own tote or their own storage. And that's a CDC recommendation that's related to limiting that sharing of objects. It helps, obviously not sharing objects reduces that touch challenge of objects being shared. It also reduces the need to clean objects during the day. But so giving each student their own tote, it just helps manage that. And again, rearranging desking to achieve 6-foot distancing. And that's the great thing about library spaces with them being larger. It allows that to be a little bit easier to achieve. Another recommendation is to have students facing the same way, if possible, especially if you're not integrating screening onto the desks themselves. And again, having those mobile flexible table solutions. Here we're showing these kite table solution that's mobile that allows you to reconfigure and reimagine these spaces quickly during the day. And design these spaces so ultimately they make sense for your distancing model and whatever teaching model you're employing right now. This is a plan view, and when we were designing these spaces, this is a plan view of the classroom area that we were looking at. And so we're showing these 6-foot distancing circles. So as we're laying out the space, we're making sure that the design proposal that we're creating achieves the 6-foot distancing. But again, we're also trying to create a layout that had some vibrancy, had some interest, and by using these kite shapes, it adds that interest. And also in the future, when we go back to more of a standard classroom model, we're able to reimagine these flexible solutions and make use of them to go back to that collaborative and flexible dynamic that we've been working towards for a number of years now. And that's the great thing about these flexible solutions that we have, is that they work and are adaptable for now and are adaptable for the future. So the classroom space that we just looked at was a little bit larger in terms of space, and so it allowed for that distancing. But if space is a little bit more limited in terms of achieving that distancing, then you can consider adding screens. Screens make it a little easier to support that face-to-face collaboration, and that's what we're trying to illustrate here with this view of this classroom. So although the space is a little smaller and there's more face-to-face collaboration, by adding these desktop screens, it just helps reinforce those CDC guidelines around having a barrier between students. Again, we're also recommending integrating dedicated storage. That's a recommendation that I spoke about. It allows each student to have their own tote. It reduces the sharing of objects. And here we're showing desking solutions that are actually wrapped around storage, which is just another way to design a space and create these more unique spaces that still meet CDC guidelines. This is a view of those barriers again, but what we're illustrating here is how they can be used in different ways. So although this layout does have the 6-foot distancing, we're still employing the screens. The screens we're showing here are foldable. Foldable desk barriers are great in terms of that each student can then have their own barrier. They can carry it from space to space during the day. And some screens have a white border, and those borders, they can be used to write on, so students can personalize them. And it just makes the screen, and it just adds a little bit of personalization to these COVID-19 designs. And we think that's a nice thing. Anytime a student can personalize, and it just brings that level of personalization into these spaces. So as with the public library, shelving organically, it has that natural screening effect. So considering your space, considering the shelving that you have now, and if it's mobile, if it could be reimagined or revisited to achieve smaller spaces or smaller zones, that can create and also define traffic routes. So we have this smaller zone and this smaller space, but we also have the shelving defining this one-way traffic system, which again, we're delineating with these floor markers. And then depending on your hybrid or cohorting model, some face-to-face collaboration would be achievable with face masks. That's what the current CDC recommendations are. So using the furniture solutions that you have now, reimagining them so that they can support face-to-face collaboration. So this is a product, it's called a mini mobile, a crescent. It's a circle and 2 crescents that dock together. This is a flexible product that we're able to reimagine to support 6-foot distancing. And it also has this small area that integrates power. So these flexible solutions, they can be reimagined to achieve these distancing designs. So that's a 3D view of that. And this is a plan view. So again, we have each of these students, and we had the 6-foot distancing perimeter around them. So as we were designing these layouts, these were the thought processes and design tools that we were using to achieve these distancing guidelines. This is a 360 view as well. So we can click this, And this is the library view as a whole. So we have this lounge area across the back with the screening. Similar to the public library, we have the vertical screening. Here we're showing acrylic screening. Then we have the fabric screening. We have the low-level shelving with the sink and the storage. The classroom area with the distancing with all students facing the same way. And then across the back, we have the mobile shelving with the smaller breakout zones and the 6-foot distancing face-to-face collaborative areas. And then at the front, the whiteboard for treating this area as a teaching area. And then the final space today, so we had the public library, the school library. This is an outdoor space, and as Kurt said at the start, this is more of a trend that we're seeing, is how to make use of outdoor spaces. Outdoor spaces are a great benefit in terms of distancing and managing the COVID-19 situation. So how to employ these large open air areas. And this is one space that we created. When we were designing this space, one of the considerations that we gave to employing an outdoor space was how can we make use of any existing architecture to provide screening from the sun, especially with outdoor spaces, whether it's an extension of a public library space or it's an outdoor classroom space that you might be considering. Depending on how long students or patrons would consider being out there, providing that screening from the sun is a great idea if it's possible. And that's what we're trying to show here with this architectural element. But then expanding that screened out space further by using any awnings or tents or screens. Here we're showing some outdoor umbrellas. So we're building this outdoor space and expanding it out further. Also using any trees, anything that provides that natural shadow or daylight protection can just extend the time students spend in this space. Sun screening can also help with the use of digital devices. Obviously, it helps with that, reducing that glare from monitors. Here we're showing also that yes, it's an outdoor space, but there are rechargeable power solutions that you can employ. And there might be power points that you can cable off from the wall, but that can be a tripping hazard. So rechargeable power towers can be a great way to bring power out into a space during the day. Then they can be brought back in at night and be recharged overnight. And again, this is an outdoor space. It is designed for distancing, but we're still building in the mobile sink and sanitization areas. And that's what these two elements are across the back wall. When we were designing this space, we were considered tiering. So we have the higher level seating at the back here and around the side. But then we have more of a floor-based learning area. So this can help with sight lines, especially if you're planning to teach or have an exercise or some kind of a programming event. To have that tiering can work really well. And again, in this area, we're providing these carry-out totes. And again, that goes back to that CDC guideline around dedicated storage and supplies per student. So each student would have their own tote and they carry in and carry out during the day. This is a 360 view, so we can click this slide. And this is this outdoor space in 3 dimensions. So we have the architectural awning. We have this floor-based learning area with the whiteboard and then the two mobile sinks. And again, we're showing this tiering with the higher level seating around the perimeter. We have the extended sunshade. And again, we're using the trees here. So if you have any trees or natural vegetation that you can use to help arrange students or patrons under or around, it just helps provide that sunscreen. So that's the third space that we shared today, which is an outdoor learning space. So with that, I can stop sharing my screen and then I can hand it back to Kurt. He'll take you through some additional slides for today.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. When I look at some of those recent designs that Stephen's team has done, the color, the shapes, the shadows, it really puts you like you're right there in that space. And one thing I wanted to call out is certainly our roots are in the library world, and that was the focus of today's presentation. Stephen called out a couple of these virtual tours that we've created, and there's a number of those on our Demco Interiors landing page. If you go under demcointeriors.com to our portfolio tab and click on virtual reality tours, you will see libraries, learning commons, classroom, makerspace areas, group gathering areas, all of these with both renderings and then multiple views where you can take virtual tours of these spaces. And we feel that that's where our design team really shines, is that at some point you're going to need some designs, renderings, and visuals to share with your team to really spark these conversations of what your spaces could look like wherever you are on your journey. If you're thinking about reopening, you have reopened. We know plans are very fluid these days, but it really takes design to help you envision what can be done safely and what can be done well. So please check this out when you have time. Again, for those of you who are interested, I can send a PDF of this presentation to you. That's a virtual tour. Hyperlink is active, but if you go under Demco Interiors, there's a number of these that I think may spark conversations from our design team, and we also have installation services that we can help you out with as well. The other thing that's obviously top of mind, Stephen called out a number of our different screens and/or barriers, but we're adding new products rapidly to our safety resources page. And a number of these are specifically towards libraries. Some of these are for K-12 districts, but whether it's curbside pickup, whether it's virtual learning, certainly staff, patron, and student safety, we have a number of things that we are actively adding to our pages, and just know that this can help you out again as you start to safely reopen. So please check out these pages. And the one thing I did want to call out, and I thought especially for this audience here of librarians, we've been having a number of conversations regarding this product that we recently added. It's a UV book sterilizer, and it can disinfect 3 books in 60 seconds. We view this as having, certainly right now during our pandemic time, is again having active conversations with librarians across the country. I think there's still going to be certainly conversations, the more I hear on the news about this being kind of a brutal cold and flu season ahead, can certainly be top of mind. It's non-toxic, does not damage the materials. And for those high circulation books that are constantly being either checked out or curbside pickup, we view this as a nice solution to disinfect those books. And if you're interested in product specs, additional details, or a video, please reach out to me. Here, I'll put my contact info on. This last slide is what I had. Really about any of your spaces, if it's furniture, if it's safety, if it's putting some together, some designs for you to at least start those initial conversations with your staff, please let me know. If it's UV book sanitizer that may help you get back to reopening sooner and safely, again, we're here to help, and I'd love to continue those conversations with any of you here down the road. With that, that was the last slide I had. Andy, if there's any questions that come in, I'll kind of pause right here. And if there's specific ones for Stephen, we can answer those right now as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. Does anybody have questions for Kurt or Stephen? We'll give this a minute or two as typing can take a moment there.
Yeah, again, if anyone would like a PDF of this, my email is right there. Just let me know. I'm happy to send it to Andy, for the WiLS members or anyone who reaches out to me specifically, I'm happy to send that to your way this afternoon.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up. I will share the recording too after today's meeting. It takes a little bit to get it converted, but I can also send out the PDF of the slides at that time too to everyone who registered. And I'll also, Kurt, if it's okay with you, I'll go ahead and share your contact information with that material. Is that okay?
Please do. Yes, thank you.
Great. Right, I don't see any questions coming in, but please feel free to reach out to either Kurt or myself if you have any questions. And thank you everybody so much for attending, and thank you so much Kurt and Stephen for sharing your expertise with us today.
Appreciate you inviting us. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.